Hello everybody, welcome back to another episode of Side Projects. This one is all about how big a hole can we dig. I've already made a video about the deepest hole in the world. It was really popular, so I just thought we could talk generally about digging deep holes, because why do I do that? Let's get into it. For some reason, humans like to dig holes. We dig holes to bury our dead, to find shiny rocks, to make basements. But all of this digging, at least, has a rationale behind it, a purpose to justify the effort. And while today we do have some examples of those, we also have an example of a hole that was dug just for the hell of it. Because today we want to ask the same question that we asked 50 years ago when they started to actually dig it, and that was, just how deep can we dig? Of course, the answer to the question gets complicated when you try to get more specific. First off, how are we digging this hypothetical hole? This might seem like a trivial question. Just grab a shovel and start throwing dirt, right? But digging holes by hand is actually incredibly hard, as anyone who's had to do it can attest. To give you an idea of that, let's talk about the Woodingdean water well located in Woodingdean, obviously. The well was dug in 1862 by hand to a depth of 390 meters, and believe me when I say that it was absolutely miserable. It took a team of diggers 4 years of working in atrocious conditions to get this well finished, and one man actually died after falling to his death at the bottom of the shaft. The Woodingdean water well is the deepest hole in the world that was dug by hand, and compared to other holes we've dug since, it didn't go very far at all. So, yeah, if we want to dig a really deep hole, doing so by hand is probably the worst option. It's time to bring in technology. Nowadays, when people dig really deep holes with advanced industrial tools, it's usually because it's a mine. On that note, let's turn to the undisputed king of deep mines, South Africa. Of the 22 deepest mines in the world, 16 of them are located in this country. All of those mines, by the way, are gold mines, proving that even though we don't use gold coins as currency anymore, old habits die hard. Everybody still loves gold. But let's now turn to the deepest mine on this list, the Mponeng gold mine, which reaches 4 kilometers into the earth, or just under 5 Burj Khalifas underground. Good lord. It is here that we start to see the effects of the primary obstacle to digging deep holes, the temperature. The Earth is a giant hot ball of rocks, and the deeper we go, the more clear that becomes. The temperature in the Mponeng mine can reach up to 66 degrees Celsius or 151 degrees Fahrenheit, which is uninhabitable. The mine has to pump slurry ice underground in order to cool the air to something that won't literally kill everybody who's working in it. And bear in mind that we haven't actually gone that far at all. The Earth's crust, or the outer layer of the planet, is anywhere from between 30 to 50 kilometers thick, and of course the crust is just the thinnest part of the planet, accounting for less than 1% of the total volume of the Earth. That's incredible. So there's the 1% crust, which is 30 to 50 kilometers deep, and that mine only goes through 4 kilometers of it. We haven't got far at all. There's also another problem. Rocks start to behave strangely when their temperature increases past a certain point. In the mantle, the largest section of the Earth's interior, the heat creates something called convection currents, where hotter rocks move towards the crust and cooler rocks move towards the core. It's also, just as a side note, insane that we know all of this, despite never having dug into it. It's more like a sea of caramel than a solid layer of rocks, and, well, I mean, just imagine trying to drill through a thick layer of caramel. It's messy and delicious, but it's mostly messy. It's also not really caramel, so it's not delicious. And also, look, I've seen the very scientifically accurate movie The Core, where they dig to the center of the Earth, and it seems very easy. You just use a giant laser, no problem. There's also the issue of the Earth's core. The core is made of 2 parts, the outer core and the inner core. In the outer core, the temperature sits at around 3,000 to 4,000 degrees Celsius, or 5,000 to 7,000 degrees Fahrenheit. If the rocks in the mantle are kind of goopy, here they're just completely melted into liquid. Last we checked, you can't drill through that. And then there's the inner core. Here, it's still just as hot as the outer core, but the force of gravity is so strong that the materials within, despite being more than hot enough to melt into liquid, are forced into a solid state by the weight of the planet around them. The inner core is is so dense that seismic waves actually reflect off it during earthquakes, which incidentally is how we discovered the existence of the inner core in the first place. So cool. You'd need unobtainium or something to get through that. So, look, we're not getting to the center of the Earth. Not that you'd want to anyway. You'd absolutely die, if not by heat, then by the dinosaurs that still live down there. Although that's only true if you happen to live in a Jules Verne novel. But can we at least get all the way through the solid bit? The crust. Well, we've listed off examples of holes dug for an actual reason. And now is the point that we switch over to the other category we mentioned at the start, a hole just for the hell of it. In May of 1970, the Soviet Union decided they wanted to drill a hole straight through the entire Earth's crust because, well, why the hell not? The reality was that the US held the record for the deepest hole, and the Soviets wanted that record. So they got a heavy drill, they found a spot, and they started drilling. And unlike most Soviet engineering projects, this actually seemed to go pretty well for a while. I mean, it is just drilling a hole though, so I mean, whatever. The hole was named the Kola superdeep borehole, so named because it was drilled in the Kola Peninsula, and it was super deep. And it was a borehole. And this is why everybody watches, that kind of intellectual breakdown. The Soviets drilled this hole over the course of 2 decades, reaching a final depth of 12,262 meters, just over 40,000 feet. And here, again, the primary obstacle was the temperature. At this depth, the rock was sitting at around 180 degrees Celsius, that's about 356 degrees Fahrenheit. The Soviets had expected it to be much cooler than that, but the fact that it wasn't meant that the rocks were behaving somewhat like plastic, which is kind of bizarre to think about even after we talked about the delicious caramel mantle that isn't caramel, so not delicious. Whatever the case, further drilling was considered unfeasible, and the hole was sealed up and abandoned. It's only 23 centimeters wide, by the way, and you could trip on it if you weren't paying attention. And for 20 years or so, that was that. We decided there wasn't much point in going further. Until we did. We will now rapidly shift back to holes dug for an actual reason, but we're not leaving Russia. We are, however, going to the exact opposite end of Russia. Just off the coast of the island of Sakhalin are a set of oil and gas fields located underwater deep in the Earth's crust. In these fields, a joint project between the Sakhalin government, the Russian federal government, and a subsidiary of ExxonMobil has been going since 2003 to tap the large petrol reserves in these fields. To that end, they've drilled a borehole even deeper underground than the Kola superdeep borehole, going down to a depth of 15 kilometers as of late 2017. According to the rules of the game, then, it would seem that capitalism officially better than communism. No one was debating that. I mean, people will in the comments, but they're wrong. In conclusion, the answer to the question of how deep can we dig is not complicated. If it's a simple answer you're after, it's probably around 30 to 50 kilometers, give or take, since that's where the Earth's crust officially turns into the Earth's mantle, which, as we've stated before, is a rock only in name. Even getting there would prove difficult, as the Kola borehole showed us, but even so, it's not clear why we would do such a thing. Then again, that didn't stop us before, so who knows at this point? Just don't let the dinosaurs out. So I really hope you found that video interesting. If you did, please do hit that like button below. Don't forget to subscribe, and as always, thank you for watching.